Bandanzawa lama ramboje hadage chewuru bemen de shula garden chembugo ne jesu koson toge mojo zardo so dada simje de lo choson ro war jinje la do so che lam don ro war jinje la lam chwe ba se war jinje la do so chwe ba yi she so ja jinje la do so 다른 아주 안에 지단계 다 단다디 단단백에 내로 뭐좀 톱으로 제발라 근데 도좀 검숨 그 시럽을 땡거 같아 근데 사과도 근데 검배 시럽을 땡네 근데 냠순용 거 봐봐 근데 제발 근데 검바 텔라양 근데 지단계 다 단다 봐도라 근데 나는 저 코와 동거디 경수 첨부터 근데 추바 추르제기 균다부 자원다부터 근데 강하다 되는 연구요 그랬으나 근데 단다디 나는 저 라나소소 셈지 내로도 뭐 마시 근데 뭐 간데스 마시 버렸으나 근데 셈 고랑 뭐 근데 라신 동바임 받은 뭐 마시네 근데 네 대라 근데 다 바나 다 승리도 다 나매 봤어야 됐으게요 그래 근데 나승리도 라신 동바임 받은 뭐 마시네 다 승리 진진 근데 대단냠돌라 근데 셈 고랑 그러신 근데 동바임발라 때네 근데 넘버 망가버익차 근데 가야로 차도로 지요리 대고 마시 발라 때네 근데 시에스잖아 근데 다시 니순제네 근데 다다 다코와도 주지 자원라고 티치기요리 대인도 대송자 다 대게 출발의 시월을 제발라 근데 당보 근데 당진되게 자와도 양타고 추고요 그래서
This morning we discussed about how to experience the ultimate realization through applying the wisdom of listening, wisdom of contemplation, and particularly upon the applying of the wisdom of meditation. And within that we explained also the reason why we are dwelling aimlessly in the samsara, that the cause of our confusion, delusion in the samsara is not understanding and not recognizing the very essential nature of our own mind, which this very essential nature of our own mind is emptiness, which is selfless, not recognizing that the empty nature of our mind, selfless, we label it as a self. And with the fixation of self upon that empty nature, we are endlessly stuck in the samsara, led us to experience the confusion and delusion of ourself. Since the very essential nature of our mind being the emptiness, the selfless nature, it has also other aspects of which is the unobstructed nature of the clarity. Not recognizing that very unobstructed nature of the mind, the other aspect of the mind, which is the again the phenomenal self. That unobstructed nature is the phenomenal self. Again, we label it as an actual existing of the phenomenal self. But this unobstructed nature is again selfless nature of the phenomenal self. Selfless nature of the phenomenal self. So therefore, not recognizing these two, selfless of the individual selfless and selfless of the phenomenal self, that we have strong fixation upon the existence of actual self and that of phenomenal self, which cause us to confuse in samsara, and that led us to be stuck within the samsara aimlessly up till today or up till now.
Tendesre, tenete indu, tenete tabuki, tesonza, ta zawa marikpa seya de tunda, ta tinni nungenzing goyoris. Tenete la, tene yurdan yurjen sanayari, da ni sanay kainayata, to teres. Tenete ta mashi pardola, tene 출백이 균데 남야 쳐토고 말했어. 출백이 균데 마치 바르도라 tene dongal gitzawa 남야 동al 남야 쳐토고 말해. 대손자 인도 tene 동al 저월 세발라 출백이 균데 제고 여러 출백이 균디 강게 쳐고 여러잖아. 대답이 tene 단다 당진테를 쳐고 여러스. 대답이 당진티 제스도 tene 가서고래 다가스 진행하면서 쨌단게 다 아직 작반다버지 똑반다버지 소소그 유연에 대파 육샤야여봐 된다고 써있는 거예요 말이스 대조 강아래서나 근데 대코랑랑 근데 단단한 속에 다 발려다 스드 베베기 책라 최고 책라 군다 세그레스 파 르군도 딱 봤어 파 매발라 파 따샤버지 쓰기요 그래서 대인도 대코랑 군도 딱 봤어 이제 파사할 때는 인도 tene 되게 냠보라 tene 박자 직 때네 tene 저거고요. 그래서 림지가 저거고요. 그래서 될 때네 아니 저네 tene 다음에 그 내로도 tene 근데 박자 직 림지 전 다음에 그 내로도 또 고고요. 마도 tene 다음에 공부 인스는 거서 tene 다도 매버서 인스는 tene 소야 가요 말했어. 대인도 tene 공부할 때네 연구고요. 그래서
So that state of very confusion is, in other words, is ignorance. And ignorance in a sense not recognizing, not being aware of the individual self and that of the phenomenal self.
근데 벽이 찍라 마릭바 하슬라 그래. 마릭바 마통와 쓰기요. 마통와 강 마통와랬으나 샘진내로 런신 똥밭에다 싸워 임바데 마통네 다니 쓴다.
In Tibetan term, this ignorance is marikpa, that with two syllables, which is the ma is negation and rikpa is awareness. So not being aware. What are we not aware of is that again, not aware of the emptiness nature of everything, and therefore we are endlessly confused. And with the idea of again strong fixation of an existence of self and other, one could also say as subject and object, and therefore constantly we are bound to experience the unavoidable nature of such a feeling of existing of such. Now the whole idea of again to go beyond, eliminate that very confusion or the marikpa or ignorance, is that we have to undo the habitual pattern. And habitual pattern is not a material substance or concrete thing that the moment you are aware not exist, which is again labeling of the existing of self and other. So this habitual, undo the habitual pattern here, is again one has to train one's mind from the strong belief of its existence. You can not simply believe it does not exist is sufficient. So the manner to train and undo the very habitual pattern that we have been accumulating for a long period of time is really applying meditation very seriously. That's why there is always emphasis, strong emphasis upon the meditation.
간데스레스나 때네 배는 알아서 남부산지베게 다 특별 챔피언 추연자부지나 추여 탐체 라시마르바 동반이래 산네 동반이 세게요. 대손자 탐체 동반에 출바 탐체 단다 르 다샤바 탐체 tane 출발에 동번이를 센파 동이 단다 동이 임바 시에게 요레스 다가는 신기 가시에게 tane 동이 임바 때네 tane 단다 받는 요문바다 군도 또 받았던 넘버 또 받은 상마 tane 받파 줄샤 초고 요레스 tane 세게 요레스 데 예나양 대더뷰기 tane 단다티 로 다샤바 대담 tane 요문바라 소바 텐수 탐제 파 동이 있는 파 동번이를 삼바 찌게 베나 동이디 유로와탄 되는 다가는 신기 파 유르탄스 가사 파 유노 디체 연두 되는 파 샘게 로 땅바점지기 되는 유로와탄 산의 용도고요 말레스 마세베게 베나 땅가란도 베나 되고 챔비가 남가 송요레 베나 동번이나 곰베게 값으로 동번이를 좀 망물로주의 송요레 베나 동이 년벌로 쇼르와다 동이 겐데스 쇼르와라 소비가 텐데 송요레 동이 년벌로 쇼르와스드 아니 무소 소소게 반의 최 탐지게 내로랑시 강의바 또 매나양 삼박에 즉 다가서 가서 책탐지라 된대다. 근데 돈이 겐데스 쇼 손데 가능성이 열었잖아. 근데 파 동번이 간대 임바다 강의임바 하마고 같이 난 청와대 마저와체 지단가 파다 돈이래 삼파 겐데발라 텐수 탐지 동번이 개공만 인소래. 대손자 인도 근데 저단게 단다티 짐밤 티 트로야티 테네 렌지게 곰베 냠뇽 테네 장고고 요라마도 파셈질로 따샤버지게 되 세게요 말레스.
So as such that there in Mahayana school it talks about that emptiness nature of everything, and particularly in the Mahayana school it talks about that possibility of transforming every klesha or conflicting emotion into wisdom, because everything is emptiness nature. So when one hears such a talk or teaching of the possibility of transforming klesha, the conflicting emotion, into wisdom, they get very excited upon that subject and thinking that simply understanding that there is a possibility to transform such thing into such, that simply the mental understanding is sufficient. But that mental understanding of that conflicting emotion could be transformed into wisdom is not sufficient to actually transform the conflicting emotion into wisdom. So therefore the understanding of word is not sufficient at all to really to actualize what is being explained, regardless of what high word, valuable word one uses. But unless you really gain some experience or realization upon that very word, that simple word that you have used seems to be very valuable or profound, it has no value at all. The emptiness. Even the emptiness in Tibetan teaching, it says that if you do not really develop some sense of the experience or realization on the emptiness, simply understanding the emptiness on the verbal or word sense, you could go wrong in many cases. Particularly on two cases which explained here, is that one simply clinging to the word, the little meaning. So you have strong, again, clinging or grasping to that very little meaning, but you have not really understood the actual meaning of emptiness. And a second is that not knowing, again, actual depth, reason, nature of the emptiness, then one simply believes things are simply empty, and believing again things are simply empty, you meditate upon that without knowing the real nature of what we are talking about emptiness. The empty, you're again speaking very much similar to the word emptiness. So these are two greatest hindrance to the meditation, because you have not fully discover the meaning of emptiness to the actual experience, but rather you have sort of believe you have understood through intellectual means. So therefore, these things that to undo, to remove habitual pattern and confusion means very similar. One cannot overcome confusion. And one cannot eliminate the ignorance simply thinking through words, or simply knowing the terms. What to do. It is not sufficient simply with the thought of the need to eliminate confusion. what is necessary is to totally again to apply meditation, and in applying meditation again as a gradual step to undo from the habitual pattern, then you can overcome the very habitual pattern that you were doing. To undo that, you have to come back from that very creating same habitual pattern and so forth.
This one that this is Hindu, this one that Bena so the gom then the young goyore. Then that gom get on that thought hang but the cast goyore. Then Shenda Chinang get your tamche, then Casegore Ranshim Majubatang. Then Tagana Shingi that transforms here to be partial. Yen Tangbute so suki, then a to the number gondola, Namdo, then a Duma Cheba, then a Sharne. Then it's them to the number kundu, Takasura, Ying Deva, Trodevas Yorba, Ting and Tambutella, then a Machoaji, some, then a Casura, Namdo Tige, Ying Mandoaji, the Inji Minji Gogoyores. Tim Meva Jigla, and a Namdo get at the Pungo Cha, then the Tando Chigi, Tendo Gangapa, Jurishagin, Cheshagin, the Tanyo Meveres. This one the Hindu, tell a Dane. Then a gom kandre jig nyamne cheba inna yang, bandata cheba inna yang, then a tangbo, then a tananga shine, then some sezi to never the hajangi kesembres.
So therefore applying of meditation becomes very necessary to come to realize what you have understood in the literal meanings, and so to practice that becomes practice meditation becomes very important. Without the meditation, applying of meditation, that let alone transform conflicting emotion in wisdom, that we are unable to control the ordinary emotion that we experience and maintain ordinary thought or ordinary emotion into, we are unable to control that ordinary thought or emotion.
Then Namdo Mangboya Lahya Gatundula, Idam Kagom Nam Sanmares. Akosoma Tanda the Carresena, then Tantati Namdoti Ya Mambusoya Tundamari, Tamche Tagorjame Gitundares. They Hindu, this one's not in the Yidam Gombe up the that Titlaboti Gombe Kamda which in a young. Then a Kashege Kasore, Sabondo, Kirim Sabondo, Kashegi Kirim Sabamendos, Kashege, this Sayazi, Takasore, Sagomi Mekapsolo, Gom Tup, Matup Getting, Gangi Yunguyores. The Kana Deni Yunguyores, then a Tambu, Yan Tambu Capsula, sent the Koran to the number gondola, Namdoge, Troni, then Nartonigium. The thing to la, and a number Trevig Capsula. Then Namdo Korang want to Sony Yingne, then it shed the day to Yam, they may do the thing to Tandoke, then the Sosuki Yam Lagomia, the Jixay, and Comia, and Chavina, Shadaka Kalakayungos. This one's on, then a Sanu, you can tell a dene, Benatang and Sanga Doji to get him combatable in a young, then it Benashinatel ten Roguyores. She need the Kaze Jig, then by Yinaya, Tazam Jig get him the Sawa. Akosuma Yunguyores.
So then, for example, in the higher practice of the Vajrayana, there is a practice known as Yidam practice. And in the Yidam practice, generally it is also described as the meditation is at the beginning when you visualize the Yidam. It is known as the developing stage of meditation and accomplished stage of the meditation. And so it is based on very much the visualization of the very Yidam or deity, and dissolving of the very deity is the developing stage and accomplished stage of meditation. Now we hear many students speaking or talking or discussing that some experience or able to develop the Yidam or visualize Yidam quite clearly. And other, quite many, they find it's very difficult to really concentrate to the developing stage of meditation, which is the visualization. The whole reason, again, why this individual who are unable to develop the Yidam, is that this Vajrayana practice of the Yidam practice is not designed to create furthermore confusion in your mind. This Vajra practice is not again designed to develop furthermore thoughts in your mind. But what it is designed for, then, the developing stage of meditation is to really experience some sacred outlook, the sacred perception of everything. So in order to develop that sacred outlook, that you have to also learn to visualize the Yidam or deity clearly, and therefore with that clarity of the Yidam's visualization, you experience a sense of sacredness of everything. Now that capacity of whether you can or cannot visualize the Yidam is also based upon the very foundation of the shamatha, one-pointedness. And of course, through the shamatha, you would have built the mindfulness. Suppose if one has not built the ground, the shamatha well, then the developing stage of meditation cannot be experienced well because you have no concentration. Since you lack the concentration, every moment you try to visualize and your mind is distracted to something else.
대체도 되는 뒷바로라 반나다 남도 직샤 되는 대단 냠조라 게르미 공bat 테니치도 탑이온도 되는 삼바 부수도 붙이라 요구요레스.
So as a lack of your concentration, you try to visualize. Between the visualization, you develop thought and your mind gets distracted. You're struggling between the visualization and distraction, and you feel tremendously uncomfortable.
아니, 나나 대체네. 되는 맛세베게 오늘 되는 바나 게름 바나 산에 마스 공백가 이런 거한 바나 냠는 진이만 되면 된다서 연구요레스 가시야.
So as a result to that uncomfortable experience, sometimes you abhor developing stage of meditation or dislike the developing stage of meditation, not because that it is very disliking, but because you have not developed the one-pointedness, and therefore you have to struggle constantly between the distraction and the visualization.
아니 뒷맛세 베게 되는 바나 다 단단하게 그냥 뒷맛세 베게 되는 다 단다 가서 그래 다 람탐세게 나는 거는 그주로 사실은 잘 리챔버스게 와래. 되네 바나 작신자부 사샤비는 다 람탐세게 자와 다 초도 줘봐. 조람세게 와래. 된다 아버지를 처음 봐 이나양 바나다 신에는 마덴바치기 되네 바나데 고미야 매버스레스. 가르레 송나 바나다 저 착제체 무건 바송야데 강한 송여라서는 이세 자원되는 착제체 송래. 이라 제바다 자와데 착제체 무 이스전에 송아레스. 디스도 이라 제바스도 강한 송여라서는 인데 말에 인데스를 착제체 무스데 인데레스야. 샘생의 동반 인데레스야. 근데 많이 받지게 삼코랑 가서 그래. 되네 맞추뱅아라. 냠버샤 토바지. 삼코랑 그 랑바고 된도 샤토바지. 전에 숨고요레스. 디순도 되네 바나 나라서 남도 내려 춥대바지네 바나 샘 나도 내 마토바지 제제도 내 마토바지 그 된도라 되네 이세도 자와지 검정이 있는 게 아니잖아 말이야. 고송아.
So of our own tradition of this Kajupa, the highest form is known as Mahamudra. The Mahamudra is also presented sometimes as known as the path of liberation. The path of liberation or Mahamudra experience means that going beyond any conception. And because of such, that it is also said that liberation means in this sense is being liberated from the mentally created thought is the Mahamudra. To be liberated from the mentally created thought is Mahamudra. So which is free from any conditioned mind, which is the very much natural thought, mind, that is Mahamudra. So it is very much highest form because you have to learn to really rest your mind in that natural state free from any conditioned thought. So to do that without having any foundation or basis of shamatha, it really becomes tremendously hard to rest mind in the very natural state of the mind.
가르레스나 되네 빼나 가르레스나 빼나 된다고 그래요. 배는 가는 배샤베이나 최면더지 하고서 최면더지래요래 최면더 뒤 지당 그 코란 매힘비 슈고 최면 매힘비 슈고 들라 근데 살외가 장신지요래스 하고서 얘나양 뒤 롱복에 딱 바르시 독수여 대베이나 되게 남의 싹 토고 말해서 하고서 대체당 인도 되는 매점지 마체베게 될 롱게마 롱게 되는 독수고죠 마디아베지 주나 되는 매리 야고 좀 버도 되는 슈게 싸워 연구요래서 되는 신기 되게 단단한 속에 되는 남 배나 가서 오래 남도 남반나서가 초 서로 유了잉 되는 될 조但是那么多错怎么是这些的样他过去对嘛特别一呢아니 근데 샘 나도 내세 샘런 신도 냠을 샤샤 샤샤샤샤 타버렸어 가라라서 당묘 값으로 남도게 코랑게 되다 남고들 초되는 용거야 말았어 니베 값으로 남도 초이나양 되네 배나 코랑게 배나 들 대시 하고서만 되네 대시의 때만 또 대니의 세도 샤마도 대손장 좀들 될 때네 다 배나 신내할 때네 되네 배나 대손res 샤디 대바가 손에 신내 랍돈 덴베 사동게 뇽문 넘버 젬베 초체네 스도 되네 배나 신내라 때네 되네 방동게 되고도 깨게 요소래
So therefore that becomes very essential part of our ultimate realization of even the highest form, the Mahamudra. Because through the development of shamatha, we can sort of cut through the distraction and develop one-pointedness which leads to experience betterment in our own meditation. The shamatha and that of the distracted mind here could be illustrated as like a butter lamp. The lamp, the fire that is burning flame, it has its clear nature. The essential nature is clarity. But if it's being moved by wind or current, although that very flame, it has essential nature is clarity, but its clarity cannot expand very much because it's moving constantly by the strength of wind. Similarly, that our very essential nature of mind is very much the ultimate nature of Mahamudra, but even you try to rest yourself in meditative state by the power of your distraction and lack of mindfulness, and so therefore letting yourself involved in all the outer phenomena, you cannot experience that very clear nature of your mind, just like the flame on the butter lamp. But if there was no wind, since the fire is burning very gently, it can radiate clarity much further than that of the earlier when there was the wind. Similarly, then when you have developed some sense of the shamatha and that of the mindfulness, you can actually experience the very nature of your mind, even when thought arises. By the power of your mindfulness, you do not cling to it, you do not follow it by again the virtue of your mindfulness. Because of that, Shantideva, the great master, explained that the shamatha is a very much ground for the development of vipassana, where through the development of the vipassana, then you cut through the conflicting emotion.
This song is in Dorna Fakton the Shineg Drevores. 당문에 셰베이나 신엘 곰베긴 드레부티 삭통레스.
So in short, making it very easy to understand.
베나 다가서 그래. 다 슝기 셰바타르 셰베이나.
According to the very philosophy of Buddhism, that the fruition, the outcome or the result of the shamatha is vipassana.
근데 텔레 로스 주버지기 베나 가르레스나 샘 나도 네버 텔 때네 샘 코랑기 데네 장신 마주베간 네 토고요레스 딘 네버 텔 때네 아니 베나 샘 그네로티 기 코랑기 장신데 다 가서 그래 장신기 하고 통스도 데 통토부터 텔 때네 용고요레스 단다 통마 토바데 가르레스나 나란조 메네 통마 토바 말레스 나란조 투도 넘버 건들 잉네 통마 토바를 마도 제단게 베나 큐즈 추즈기 냠녀 솔레이네 용고요레스 얘나야 근데 배나 나는 저거 됐다는 것이 도고 자신 통해 쏠래 얘나야 나죠 배나 되고 전부지 얘나야래 되고 주 쏠래 얘나야 배나 그런 축축게 냠면시 용어요 아래 근데 얘나야 근데 배도 되던 넘버 컨트롤 그 가서 우리 쌤들 초손들 잉손들 안에 배대 그런 쌤게 내로 인다 근데 뒤중게 다 지단 게 다말게 다 가서 그래 잉화인다 가만히 있으면 때 코란 안든 근데 뚝뚝이야 그랬어.
So, when we experience some calm abiding, tranquility, peaceful of the mind to the shamatha, then we do experience the very nature of mind, or realize, have a glimpse of such. Now, the reason why we are not experiencing the very nature of our mind is not that the nature of our mind is not there within ourselves right now. Right now, the reason why we are not experiencing is that it is still there, but because of strong distraction, we are unable to recognize that. Although all of us, one of our lifetime, we do experience the glimpse of that.
맞다. 뒤도 넘버 컨트롤.
In our life, we do experience a glimpse of such. But although we do experience such a glimpse of that natural or the ultimate nature of our mind, but again, by the power...
메시지를 팀을 말다. 뒤도 넘버 컨트롤. 따와 샷. 주로 내 샷되게 여러 개 주기.
Sorry.
No, I'm just saying. He said once a lifetime.
I didn't say once in a lifetime.
That is very.
죄송합니다.
To the number control.
먼저 반갑습니다. So we do experience that the ultimate nature of our mind in everyday life, a glimpse of it. I didn't know how to put it, glimpse of it in everyday life, so that I was starting. So although we are experiencing it, a glimpse of our essential nature of mind in our regular life. However, although it is experienced, but we do not recognize it due to the distraction or strong distraction. So the whole idea is not that it does not exist within ourselves. Whole idea is not that we are not experiencing it, but we do not recognize it due to the strength and overwhelming of the distraction. So we have to remove such to the really shamatha practice of the building of the shamatha. One point in this in oneself.
This one's at the then done dorna on a canon so get some than a shine gomiati, then it let Hambupa gomiatamchi, some no matamba chene, then a penalty gom tamjek zawam, Ningundo. Then they into then that and then so chala, that's to convenience. Then it's a way get that and I should get one to get instructors who get canon to teach the destination. Yore, they cannot set in the zone of the Karasena. Tene tan당에 세븐나 신 곰이하고 주나 삼백을 라와다. tene ne tamasi kiranzu shinge yore tene namdo tindes chosona ta tabde kuranzu karala veterwa tene namdo chosona tene namdo chowa de sosoge mosheba che ne tene de mosheba de kurangu tingdo pa tene sha kosoma 도스체 tene ya samsam tene bed namdo shukche butik shugo tik to teksege도나 tene namdo kurangu ngol pa 땅해지요 봐 다 남도 초근도 선배기 대시 그 고랑은 걸 봤다.
So now that having understood such, not again underestimating the very shamatha practice, one must apply the very shamatha very seriously because it is very much the ground for all the developments of the fruition upon such or meditation. As such, that we will now do a short session of the shamatha meditation. And what is really important during the meditation, although you must already have the instruction of the shamatha given to you by your instructors, what is important to remember during this practice of meditation is you try to be free from hope and fear as explained this morning. that not to hope any sort of result of experience and not to be fearful of not having any experience and so forth.
가르레스나 tene pena thare gomyago ma chunga yang 되게 양자 tru가 퇴번 줘야요 말이스. 아고송아 tene
so there's no point to be frightened of anything, because even if your meditation doesn't go well this time, it will not cause you to confuse more. Even though if it doesn't go well. So there's nothing to be frightened of, to be afraid of. And in addition to that, again to add to all your instructions, that as you sit the nature of the thought, but even it seems that you are developing very uncomfortable thoughts, unable to rest at that very nature, then you try to again watch at the very nature of the watcher, who is thinking the thought arising, or who is being aware of the thought arising. So look at the very nature of who is aware of the thought being arisen and so forth.
남도 시작도 대다 남도 시작도 사바 대인기 되네 배나 가세오래 바 여와 매와 다 가세오래 되는 바 셈시나.
Not separating between the thought.
One of you use, okay?
Not separating between the thought, and not separating between the person who is aware of thought is developing, not separate between such. Look at the very nature of the thought and the one who is aware of the thought arising.
그래서 당한 스트레스 검정이
Okay, so we'll do a short meditation now.